Hello, good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Diaz, your resource speaker for this morning. And I hope you're fine right now. How are you feeling? Okay. So, before we begin, let us have first our prayer. So, please compose yourself and let us ask God to enter our heart. Let us pray. Loving Father, I come before you with faith in your promise that whatever I ask for in your name, you will grant me, if it is good, for the good of the soul, in accordance with your divine will. Be with us in this webinar. Okay, to start with, I just would like to remind everyone the guidelines that we have to follow while listening to the webinar. I would like you all to switch off your microphone, and then later on, after my talk, you could ask questions for the open forum. So as of now, I'd like you to close first your microphone. Please switch off the microphone. Thank you. Now, our topic for this morning is about effective listening. How good are you in listening? Have you observed yourself? Do you listen? Do you oftentimes listen to people around you? Well, a lot of communication problems at home, in school, and at work occur because of inability of many people to hear, listen to, internalize, and act on what is communicated. Remember that in the word heart, you could find also another word wherein there is that word ear, and even the word hear, meaning to say that we need to use our ears to listen to other people so that we could understand them. Okay, this is the reason why I choose this topic, effective listening. This is our topic for today for our webinar, Module 1, topic, effective listening. So a while ago, I asked you, how effective is your listening skill? Have you observed yourself? Well, we are given 2 ears and 1 mouth that we may hear more than we talk. But do you really listen? Listen to people around you, at home, in school, or even at work. How often do you listen? And when you listen, do you internalize what they are telling you? Remember that listening is one of those skills in communication. That's why I told you a while ago that we are given 2 ears and 1 mouth that we may hear more than we talk. So every good conversation starts with good listening. So before you talk, sometimes you also need to listen first. Module 1 is effective listening. So you will be learning some skills to improve your listening skills in this webinar. Of course, take note that communication problem can be summarized as something like, what is said is not necessarily heard. What is heard is not necessarily understood. What is understood is not necessarily internalized and accepted. What is accepted is not necessarily acted upon. And what is acted upon may not be acted on consistently. So what are we going to do? Remember, going back to what I told you, we are given 2 ears and 1 mouth that we may hear more than we talk. Well, we also need to consider the diversity of people. How do they accept the message that we are delivering to them? Do they really listen? And are you also listening to them? That's why what is heard is sometimes not necessarily understood, because it depends upon the receiver. How did the receiver understood what you are saying? Every good conversation starts with good listening. Do you agree with this? That every good conversation starts with good listening. Of course, if you're talking to a person, and if that person that you're talking to does not know how to listen to you, do you think you will still continue conversing and communicating to that person? So notice that the problem emanates from the poor listening. Most of the time, we only hear but do not really listen. Hearing is confined to merely hearing what is literally said. Listening is more than hearing the words. Take note of that. Listening is more than hearing the words. It involves an attempt to understand what is said, what feelings and concerns are involved, and what action is expected. That's why, going back to what I told you regarding the summarization of this communication problem, what is said is not necessarily heard. What is heard is not necessarily understood. And what is understood is not necessarily internalized and accepted. What is accepted is not necessarily acted upon. And what is acted upon may not be acted on consistently, because it also depends on how we accept the message. Okay? If we have that willingness to really listen and hear what the other person is telling us, we will have the internalization of that message, and at the same time, we will act upon it not only once but of course consistently, because we really internalized what we heard from that person. So here is a fun example. If you try to look at the illustration, the difference between hearing and listening. The customer said, "Waiter, how come my steak is well done?" And then the waiter said, "Oh, thank you, sir. My pleasure to satisfy you." The customer said, "My goodness, are you insulting me?" Let us analyze the situation. Customer uses words, "well done." How do you understand this word, "well done"? If you heard it, "well done," what does it mean? If the customer will say, "well done," remember the customer told the waiter, "How come my steak is well done?" The customer uses words, "well done," meaning not prepared as ordered. He asks for a steak to be done rare, not well done. Waiter interpreted the word "well done" to mean well prepared, so he said, "Thank you." Guests perceived the waiter's wrong response as insult. See how the other person understood the meaning being delivered to them or to him. So it has a different interpretation. That's the reason why communication problem occurs in that situation. Let's have another example. Okay? This time, a listening waiter is expected to respond as follows. The waiter said, "Sir, I heard you say 'well done.' You mean it is well prepared." Is this how he understood it? The customer said, "No, I asked for a rare steak." Then the waiter said, "You mean you asked for steak? Cook, rare, but you were given a well done?" The customer answered back, "That's right." And then the waiter said, "I'm sorry about that. Let me get it back and have it prepared to your liking." So what have you noticed from the conversation? Though there was a good gesture of showing by the gesture of the waiter of serving the customer well, because she will be, or the waiter will be preparing it according to the liking of the customer. That is a good attitude also, and a good gesture of a waiter by serving the customer. So note that one clearly hear what is said, but not necessarily understood what exactly is the message being conveyed by the sender of the message. One needs to listen to understand. So if you will not listen really, you will not understand the message well. Much so if you will not internalize what you have heard from the sender. Of course, conflict will arise and there will be problem in communication. I hope you were able to understand this. Now, let me give you tips to effective listening. So what are these tips of effective listening? Let's have number 1. It shows there that you have to show interest. How do you show interest? Kindly recall situation wherein you had your conversation with other people and you have shown your interest with that person or to a group. So how do you show interest? You could show interest by looking at the person straight on the eyes. Meaning to say, you are interested to what that person is telling because you're looking straight on the eyes of that person. But make sure, you know that person really when you look at the eyes of that person. But if he or she is a stranger, I may not advise you to do this because you know what kind of world we have right now. Another thing to show interest is that you could also smile when appropriate, when necessary. So you could smile to show that you are interested. Or you could even nod occasionally, showing that you are really listening. And sometimes you could also ask questions if there are matters that you're not able to understand. You could dig for details. And the last one, you may use encouraging statements or phrases like, go ahead, I think so, I see, tell me more. If you are really interested in that person's discussion or in that person's message for you. Another tips would be focus on content. Seeing though what is said, what exactly is the message that the person is trying to convey. This now is showing that you are an active listener. If you focus on the content would be the message being delivered. Okay, the message that is being delivered for you to internalize and for you to acted upon. What to do? Okay, what are you going to do with the message? To acted upon the message. Another is focus on the feelings and concerns being revealed. What is being expressed not only in words but even in non-verbal. Okay, maybe you know what are those non-verbals. Non-verbals are those you do not need to use words here, but you could use bodily action. Okay? showing empathetic listening. Pay attention to the body language, the tone of voice, and other nonverbal cues. Tone of voice conveys emotion. Take note of that. Even the sweetest words that we know, like for example, I love you, may be interpreted differently if you will deliver it also differently. And what kind of voice, the tone of voice, are you going to use if you say I love you? Okay? May I ask everybody, will you say I love you? And let's find out how did they understood, or how did they understand, I mean, the word I love you when you delivered it. Now, take note that listening to understand is called active listening. When we listen, we seek to understand. So when you listen to the word really, take note of the content of it. The word I love you. How was it delivered to you with the tone of the voice? And did you really listen? Did you seek for understanding? Listening to understand is called active listening. However, if one has to build the goodwill of others, it is not enough that we understand. We need to give the appropriate response. Of course, if somebody will be telling to you that he or she loves you, that person is expecting for a feedback, an answer, an appropriate response. But to do so would require that we are able to discern behind the spoken words the concerns, problems, or feelings being revealed by the sender. Take note that it is only with the heart and not just the ears that one can truly listen. Next tip would be number 4. Tips to effective listening. Number 4. Avoid interrupting or trying to redirect the conversation to your concerns by saying something like, oh, that is not really as bad as what happened to me. Let me tell you that. A good listener must not be always waiting for a chance to talk and let his side or story be heard. You can't concentrate on what someone's saying if you're busy in preparing your response or rebuttal. Another tip will be empathize when necessary and show interest and concern on what's being said. Nod occasionally, smile at the person, and make sure your posture is open and inviting. You encourage the speaker to continue with small verbal comments like, yes, oh, really, So when there are concerns, feelings, or problems being expressed by a sender, empathize. This means you imagine yourself in his situation, expressing words of empathy. Like, I can imagine your situation. I can see how disgusted you are, and I understand why you feel that way. The last one, oh, not yet the last one. Another tips to effective listening: show respect, acknowledge ideas, even they may not be agreeable to you. Never argue or prove the person wrong. Use the yes, but technique when appropriate. Never interrupt. Let the person finish his try to set aside judgment. Most people are antagonized by responses that attempt to prove them wrong. Take note of this. There are examples. Examples are hasty judgments, put down, and discouraging statements like, that's an old style, it would no longer be working, something like that. So those are some of the techniques. Now, let us evaluate yourselves. Maybe you could get a pen and a paper and then try to evaluate yourself. How good are you? What would be you could check your listening behavior right now. Okay, are you ready? Let's have number 1. Question. So your answer will be 1, 2, 3. 1 being sometimes, 2 often, and 3 always. You pretend to pay attention while your eyes are focused on the sender. Your mind wanders, maybe on other issues or preparing a rebuttal. 1, 2, or 3. Next, number 2. You simply interested to know what others are saying or who they are without discerning or showing concern on what they want or need. 1, 2, or 3. 1 being sometimes, 2 being often, and 3 being always. So try to check your listening skills. So which one? 1, 2, or 3? Next, number 3. You listen selectively and discriminately, hearing only what you want to hear, interested only on matters that concern you, not what concerns others. I repeat, you only listen selectively, discriminately, hearing only what you want to hear, interested only on matters that concern you, not what concerns others. So 1, 2, or 3. 1 being sometimes, 2 being often, and 3 being always. So please check your listening skill. So I hope you can follow and you are able to assess and evaluate yourself. Number 4, you evade or avoid listening to sensitive issues, especially those that relate to your personal life or problems. So, check your listening behavior. 1 being sometimes, 2 being often, 3 always. So you evade or avoid listening to sensitive issues, especially those that relate to your personal life or problems. Okay? So I hope you could evaluate yourself right now. Check your listening behavior. Okay? And then for number 5, as you listen, you always prepare for rebuttal. You listen to another's idea with an intent to refute or rebut what is said. I repeat, how good are you in listening? Check your listening behavior. 1 being sometimes, 2 often, 3 always. As you listen, you always prepare for rebuttal. You listen to another's idea with an intent to refute or rebut what is said. Okay? I hope you were able to get and evaluate yourself from the following items that I mentioned. That's 1 to 5 already. So let's have number 6. More often, you'll listen only to yourself, not to other people. Focus on your own ideas and convictions that you fail to see and understand what other people are saying and the merits of their ideas. I repeat, more often, you listen only to yourself, not to other people. Focus on your own ideas and convictions that you fail to see and understand what other people are saying and the merits of their ideas. So 1, 2, or 3. So I hope you were able to get it. Okay, now let's have our open forum. You may ask questions if you'd like to ask questions right now. I'm very much willing to answer your questions. Okay, thank you and good day. Happy listening.